Hi, it's me, Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut. Welcome back to Starbase. This is part 2 of our tour with Elon Musk. In part 1, we took you around Star Factory. We saw what's new. A lot's changed in 2 years. But in this one, we're going to take you out to the launch pad. And we're actually going to see the entire full stack rocket with Elon before its 4th flight test. Then we're going to go talk to Elon after it flies, see what went right, what went wrong, and what to expect on future launches. So, part 2, let's get started. Have you ever got a chance to see it from like the beach side?
Sorry?
Have you ever got a chance to see it from like the beach, from the dunes?
Yeah.
It's pretty insane. I love the heat shield side is the coolest part by far.
Yeah. It's a damn tall rocket.
Yeah.
So, and it's going to get taller.
It's just, can we get even closer?
Yeah.
I don't, even when you're underneath it, you don't quite get the sense of scale.
Yeah.
It's just insane. Jeez. Look at that. Hey,
Yeah.
I gotta get a wrap around with you right there. That is so cool. I mean, the scale just doesn't make sense. There's nothing else out here to like compare it to, you know? If this is a huge tower next to a ginormous rocket in the middle of nowhere with no buildings, no anything. So it's just so hard to put to scale. I mean, those grid fins are the size of a car.
Yeah.
And they're so far up there that nothing makes sense.
Yeah. It's a gigantic rocket. I mean, it's 5,000 tons at liftoff. It's the largest flying object ever made of any kind.
And you're trying to catch it.
Yeah. Catch it with Mechazilla arms. I was actually slightly inspired by Kong vs. Godzilla.
Yeah?
You know Mechazilla?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the reason for this?
Well, the reason for the like I said, there's many ways to solve this problem. Obviously, you could do it with landing legs. The problem with landing legs is you've got the weight of the landing legs,
mm-hmm.
and you've got to protect them on entry, especially
mm-hmm.
for the ship. That's tricky.
Yeah.
And then you've got to get a giant rocket from where it landed back onto the launch stand.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of what is in the limit, the most efficient, most rapidly reusable architecture would be that the thing that lifts the rocket onto the pad is what catches it.
What catches it?
Yeah.
So is there still plans, like, how will the ship actually get caught? Are there similar nubs on the ship as there are?
They aren't currently nubs, but they will be, yeah.
Okay. Like deployable
They'll catch you
or
under the armpits, you know?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, do you just grab it by the flaps, or is there the nubs then someday?
This is a matter of much debate, but again, there's like a lot of ways to solve this.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on what range of kind of landing velocities they're going to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it because if it comes in at like twice of if it comes in with a lot of momentum,
mm-hmm.
You have to have much stronger catchers than if it doesn't.
Right.
Now the downside, if you try to reserve propellant such that it is a very precise landing, you're burning propellant to achieve that precision.
So that's also.
So which one is better?
Right. That's also mass.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you want static mass or dynamic mass in the form of propellant? There's some combination of the two is needed in order to have the ship get caught by the arms and not have the forward flaps sheared off when it comes down.
Right. Are the flaps, there's talks of the flaps kind of having a little bit of a redesign too, like maybe moving a little bit?
Yeah.
Is that still?
There's actually, if you understand what the ship's trying to achieve, it's actually bugged me for a long time. for at least for the low Earth orbit missions, it's coming back with an empty cargo bay. So the ship naturally wants to come in engines first.
Yeah.
Because that's the heavy part. It's the center of mass is low.
Yeah.
So now the rear flaps counteract the center of mass, the center of pressure. So you're really balancing pressure and mass. It's basically a seesaw.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now the forward flaps that are not fully stowed are actually hurting you, because forward flaps, if you've got a maximally stowed position of the forward flaps, that means you still have some frontal area that is pushing the rocket backwards and making it want to go engines first.
Right, right.
So whereas frontal mass in the rear is helpful, basically frontal area in the rear is helpful.
Yep.
Frontal area in the front is counterproductive.
It's counterproductive.
So you really ideally want the flaps to be in the stowed position, invisible to the flow. So they're not trying to tip the rocket backwards.
But don't you, I guess it's not like you're trying to maximize braking necessarily. You're trying to achieve a certain glide ratio and things like that too.
You've got to control it through hypersonic, subsonic, supersonic, transonic, and subsonic.
Yeah.
At least until you get to subsonic, the rocket really is. The challenge is not having the engines go having the engines go.
Yeah.
Basically, you're trying to maintain an angle of attack that's called around 65, 70 degrees.
Yeah.
Like so, if this is the surface, if this is the Earth, it's doing roughly this angle.
Yeah. And so the rear flaps, the aft flaps are out as much as possible to try to keep the engines from scooting forward.
Yeah. So you get the rear flaps. If the rear flaps deploy, that's how that increases the drag.
Yep.
It pushes the ship this way.
Yep.
When the rear flaps deploy, when the front flaps deploy, it actually pushes the ship back.
Yeah.
So what the front flaps really are they're really trim flaps.
Right. Right.
They're not trying to change the pitch angle.
They're trying to maintain it almost.
Well, you need to control the ship in yaw and roll, in addition to pitch.
Yeah.
So, the work of essentially controlling pitch is really the rear flaps, and they're trying to move the center of pressure such that the engines don't go into the flow. So ship's going like this. Rear flaps deploy. It makes it want to tip forward, which is good. It counteracts the mass at the rear.
Yep.
The flaps at the front are really there for trimming your roll and yaw primarily.
Yeah. They all interact with each other too. Which is
exactly. That's
part.
why it's like. Technically, the front flaps also do some pitch action.
Right.
But for setting your fundamental pitch angle, it's the rear flaps.
Right.
And you want your front flaps to be when they're back to be invisible to the flow.
Yeah.
So that your rear flaps don't have to do extra work.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But you also need some margin though too. So having those be able to dip out and do a few things to maintain.
You've got to control yaw and roll. So you really kind of need like 3 control surfaces. And we have 4, so slightly more than you need.
Yeah.
But in the high heating regime, which is where this really matters, the air is very stable. You don't have wind, really. It's the air is homogeneous.
Right.
So if the ship is operating properly, it'll look like it's barely doing anything. It's just the flaps are barely moving, and it's just maintaining this angle.
Yeah, because it's not having to react to all these turbulences and all this stuff.
There's no disturbances.
I never thought about that until it gets into the lower atmosphere, obviously.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing, is there almost like when you're going from hypersonic and supersonic, and is there obviously the control schemes almost change a little bit to a certain degree.
It changes a lot. Yeah.
And
it changes a lot subsonic.
Yeah.
Big time.
So that's probably pretty crazy to have to model that and get some sense of where that's going now. But at the end of the day, you're still gonna have to see how it happens when it actually gets to that regime.
Yeah. Once you get to subsonic, the ship is falling like a skydiver.
Yes, we've seen.
Yeah, so the flaps are kind of like arms and legs of a skydiver.
Yeah.
So it's counterintuitive. It's not at all how an airplane works.
Right.
Airplanes don't fall.
Yeah, it's like 90 degrees to what an airplane would do, basically. Yeah.
Yes, 90 degrees to what an airplane would do. It's really analogous to a giant skydiver.
Yeah. I mean, exactly, because that's exactly how a skydiver
pretty damn close,
maintains their orientation.
Yeah.
That is just the craziest thing. When I gotta ask, so, you know, you have the ability now as SpaceX being, you know, where you're at, to be able to do iterative design like this. If you could have done that on Falcon 9, had a total blank slate and literally just minimum viable product, we're going to throw that thing out, would you have done that on Falcon 9? Because Falcon 9, people forget, like, you know, they look at this and they go, oh, they don't even know what they're doing. Well, you guys know how to build a rocket and launch it for the first time. Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy. I mean, you've already done that. In hindsight...
who's saying we don't know what we're doing? And what have they done?
Oh, exactly. That's
it's easy to be an armchair rockets engineer.
Exactly. But they don't understand the test the prototyping, the testing phase. So if you could have done something like this with Falcon 9 in the early days, would you have done that if you could have, or
we wouldn't be able to make Starship without the benefit of Falcon 9.
Right.
So it's sort of like saying if you had a time machine or something,
right,
you get into like time machine logic loops.
Right.
So, I mean, there's nothing in common with, like we learned a lot from Falcon 9, but there's nothing in common there's no design element that Starship has in common with Falcon 9. Nothing. I mean, I take it back. You've got grid fins in both cases.
Yeah.
For the, you know.
There may be some common-ish avionics or something.
Nope, all new avionics.
Really?
Yeah.
Jeez. That's insane to think about.
All the avionics, all the software, all new.
And Tower 2 is starting to head this way from Florida, it's looking like, and that's going to go over that way, is that right?
Yeah, and Tower 2 will have a number of upgrades. It'll be taller to allow for the next generation of Starship.
Yep.
So we're going to add a few sections to that. And then the redesigned arms will be shorter. So if you look at those arms up there, those arms have very high moment of inertia, so that they're very long.
Right.
So you actually when you have long arms, it's hard to move them fast.
Right.
And because you have to move them and brake.
Yeah.
And so it's just a lot of momentum.
Yeah, and a lot of damping.
Yeah. So the new arms will be able to move much faster, and they'll be a fair bit shorter than those arms.
Basically, right at the catch point, right? Like there's
pretty close.
Not too much beyond that.
Yeah. So they'll be a fair bit shorter. Maybe you get like a couple meters beyond the catch point.
Well, is there any kind of redesign to the OLM and the booster bidet and all the flame trench and stuff like that?
It's a total redesign. Which I don't know if we should do a total redesign, but the guys really want to do it, so I was like, okay.
Like it'll have like more of a flame trench this time? Yeah. This has turned out better than I expected, though, I have to say.
Yeah.
On Flight 2, when it took off and it was like, hey, look, it actually worked.
Yeah.
It
didn't
cool.
blow up.
So, but the ring and stuff, is anything changing? Is it almost like a whole everything new, or is it?
Pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
The hold down arms also change. It's not the launch arms, because the current ones have some potential to bind and grab the rocket, which would be real bad.
Yeah.
So we have a new design for the launch arms that take the load of the rocket and then retract, so that they're not going to bind and potentially cause the whole thing to explode.
Yeah, that'd be bad, especially at this stage.
Yes.
It's getting a lot more legitimate, and
Yeah, we're trying to protect against the explosions. I've got basically bunker-like concrete walls.
Yeah.
A lot of steel protecting the launch tower. So it's designed to, like, that wall is designed to protect the propellant tanks against a full explosion of the rocket.
Yeah. So Tower 2, that's on its way. Like, they're literally loading up barges, and you have sections out at the factory and everything. So Tower 2 is like already, I mean, it's just crazy to think how quickly it's all. And you're going to be building that here all year probably, and Wouldn't be surprised if that thing ends up being used already by next year. Can't even keep up with this. That is ridiculous. Wow. Tomorrow, after this thing launches, would you want to do a quick little rundown on how you feel about it?
Depends on how it went.
Let's say it makes it through re-entry, both of them.
Sure.
Okay. Well, we better shake on that then, huh? No, that'll be awesome. I mean, tomorrow's going to be phenomenal. I feel. How are you feeling about it now that you've had time to see it all and looking at the data?
I think the odds are on our side, but there's still, some chance that the rocket blows up on liftoff. It's not zero.
Right.
I mean, this is the best launch site and the best rocket we've ever made on Starship, so it has the highest odds of success. And
you can even tell the amount of attention to detail and things on the, on the ship and the tiles and everything.
It's much more finesse.
Yes. Yeah. It's not.
This doesn't have Gronky bits.
yeah. Exactly. Oh man, it's gonna be exciting. Can't wait for it. It's gonna be. I hope people will pay attention to this because it's history in the making.
Yeah.
We're watching.
And the cylinders are now pretty straight. Early versions were kind of a Michelin Man situation.
No, especially Mark 1, like you were talking about earlier. Mark 1 was
let's just say lighting was important.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Lighting was important.
Oh man,
you need romantic lighting for Mark 1.
Well, I really, really appreciate you taking time. T minus, oh God, we're within 12 hours now. So T minus 12 hours, and hopefully we'll see this thing lift off tomorrow again.
Yeah, it's wild. All right,
it's wild. Thank you so much, Elon.
Thank you.
The next morning, that Starship stack with Booster 11 and Ship 29 did indeed launch for Starship's fourth full stack flight. Our everyday astronaut / Cosmic Perspective crews managed to get some amazing slow-mo shots, but only for the first few seconds due to cloud cover. We can't wait for the next launch, so we hopefully get some incredible slow-mo shots of the booster returning and hopefully a catch attempt as well. That will be crazy, and of course we'll be covering it live in 4K when it happens. But the good news is this test was the biggest success of the program yet, with both the booster and the Starship upper stage re-entering and softly splashing down. Which was great news for us because Elon kept his promise and followed up after this historic test. That was, come on, I mean,
so sick.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
You saw it? You saw the whole thing?
I did predict that would happen, although it begs the question, why don't we do more about it? We did do a lot.
Oh my gosh. That was insane.
Yeah.
Do you feel pretty satisfied with the results of?
Yeah, it's awesome. This is really, I'd say, best outcome day.
Really it is. I mean, did as you were watching the grid fins start to burn through, or I mean, not the grid fins, but the flaps. Well, I mean, you had to have thought one of those was just going to rip off, right?
Yeah. I mean, the heating, you can see the heating from the internal cameras.
Yeah.
You don't need infrared cameras. You can actually just see it glow.
Right.
So the thing about steel is it's going to glow for a long time before it fails. I think one of the biggest lessons today is the incredible resilience of a high temp stainless steel alloy.
Right.
Because it hung in there.
Yeah.
You always want to be careful about jumping to conclusions.
Right.
We need the jump to conclusions, Matt, from Upper Space.
Right. Yeah.
Don't
exactly.
Jump to conclusions. So we have to be a little hesitant about reaching conclusions before we fully analyze the data, because sometimes your first guess is they're wrong.
Right.
But we obviously need to make the hinge. we need to make the flap hinge area far more robust. So we'll really go crazy hardcore on that, and hopefully I don't eat my words, but that will not be the reason. Like if the next flight doesn't make it back fully intact, that will not be the reason. Hinge flight will not be the reason. We're going to just spend a bunch of mass.
Right. Just make it super robust. Overdo it for now.
Yeah. I mean, there's just things you can do, to increase the tile precision, decrease the gap, improve the gap filler, thicken the tiles. If any gap is not perfect, then you got to crack the tile, pull it off, do another one. It's kind of a pain in the ass.
Right.
So it's not like we thought that, like if we thought there was something obvious that could be done about the hinge, flap hinge area, we would have done it.
Right.
But like I said, we'll just go to town. Probably thicker tiles, thinner gaps, better gap filler.
Maybe even
tightening the tolerances. There's a whole bunch of things that we can and will do for the next flight. I mentioned yesterday that we have an improved design of Starship coming down the pike. Not immediately, but it's something that I've actually been kind of harping on. Just saying, like, guys, we need to do this for a while, which is to move the forward flaps leeward so that they're not at the kind of 180 degrees. They're moved kind of leeward. Yeah. So it'll look a little bit asymmetric with the rear flaps. The rear flaps are where they should be at 180 degrees. So
those aren't improvements you'll see already on like Ship 30, because Ship 30.
No, it's a total redesign of the whole front section, because you've got to redesign the mount points. Yeah. The reason it's not like the team disagreed with me about this. They did agree, but they were like, is that really the priority? Right. So because you've got to redesign all of the support structure, the actuator mounts. It's a huge redesign of the front end. Right. And there will be a number of other sort of improvements we do, to the header tanks and the whole front section, and it's kind of like front section version 2, which will be much better. Yeah. So more reliable, more payload, and also easier to manufacture, which is a big deal.
Do you know, did the aft flaps and the did all of them kind of have similar burn through? Do you know? Or?
No, the right forward flap was the one that had the, because there's tolerance variations. There's a little bit of just stochastic, luck. Right. Yeah. It's like there's a bit of Russian roulette going on here, which was the unlucky tile. But it looks like there was probably, I'm just guessing, here, this is speculative, that we had probably the gaps on the tiles were a little wider on the right side than the left side, because it was really the right front flap that by far had the biggest issues. Okay. And we can see this in terms of when the vehicle is trying to control itself, how much deployment does each flap have? Right. So the other 3 flaps had more or less normal deployment, but the broken flap had to really go all out and stick its like skeleton hand like really far out to have an effect.
It reminded me of like Short Circuit, like Johnny Five in Part 2. I don't remember if you remember that movie, Short Circuit. Johnny Five is alive. Like
that's a long time ago.
A long 80s movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And he gets like all beaten up, and he's like just this like skeleton of his, and he's like still fighting along. It just reminded me of that, like seeing this like claw of a flap. I couldn't believe how little it was needing to move though, and was still.
It was moving a lot at the end.
Was it?
Oh yeah. It was going to like full deployment, especially subsonic. But it performed admirably for its sort of insane, level of destruction.
And I can't believe it still could move when all of it looked like it, like you'd think
I mean, me neither. I'm like, holy shit, is that thing still moving? Yeah. But the actuator was still working. The various the actuator linkages did not burn away. The hinges were still working. It's like, damn, okay.
That's insane.
Insane.
I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, totally. So now it was able to maintain aerostability subsonically, but but because of the ragged flap, it was not able to steer itself to the exact right position. So it was about 6 kilometers off positionally.
Okay.
But it did manage to maintain stability all the way to the ground.
Does this make you, like, I mean, we talked a lot about ship, but booster obviously did phenomenally well too. Was that on target? That it actually hit
the booster
GPS?
was almost perfect. I mean, so obviously there was one engine that didn't light, or that it didn't explode, but that we thought we should not turn on. Basically, I think it aborted during the start sequence out of concern. But 32 engines is fine. It's resilient to multiple engines being lost and still completing its mission.
Yeah.
Like each engine loss is only 3% of thrust. So.
Exactly. It's pretty minuscule compared to another vehicle that could be 50% or 100% even. And then on landing burn, it seemed to lose another engine as it was lighting up for landing burn, but it still looked like it did a pretty precise touchdown, it looks like. And
Yeah. No, it landed in the water.
Yeah.
Intact. On the water. It was literally bobbing in the water, and then obviously it tips over. When it tips over, it smacks down pretty hard because it's like falling from 70 meters, like over 200 feet.
Yeah. So does that? I know you mentioned on X that you were planning to actually try the boot. Do you feel like you might want to try doing the booster catch next? Is that?
Yeah. And we'll talk it over with the team, see if there's any lingering concerns. But at the point at which we can do an accurate boost back and we can execute the landing burn, which we've shown, then I think we should try to have the tower catch it.
Wow. And you don't feel like you need to have Tower 2 ready before you do that?
No, not necessarily, because we do have replacement parts for the arms. And there are actually a better set of arms we could put on there.
Right.
Those are kind of old design.
Yeah.
I mentioned that those arms are actually too long, so that moments of inertia are too high. So it's just you want actually shorter arms that can move faster.
Yeah.
So my inclination, but I mean the way these things work at SpaceX is not. It's rare for me to sort of drop an imperial decree. Once in a while I will, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Usually it's like we'll talk it over the team, see what the general consensus is, and move in that direction.
Yeah. That's going to be wild. So hopefully next though are we going to kind of see more or less a repeat, you think, again, and of this mission profile? Maybe bring the booster back. Would you maybe do a Raptor relight this time to kind of prove out orbital capabilities in coast phase? And
yeah, that's a good question. We haven't decided. Are we going to do? Like clearly, a Raptor relight does work because we had the three
relight.
Yeah, the three steering engines, which would be the ones that would relit even after all that drama coming through crazy heating.
Yeah.
Of the two tiles that we put in the rear where we took the tiles off, we'd actually put some backup ablative there. One was 2 layers of ablative, one was 1 layer of ablative.
Yep.
The 2 layer of ablative did not burn through. The 1 layer of ablative did, but I'm not sure if it actually burnt through the steel too, but it did erode the single layer of ablative. But it just says that if you have 2 layers of our ablative, it does not actually burn through.
So that could be
for a missing tile.
The backup layer you're kind of talking about. So worst case scenario next time, which will probably, knowing you guys, be in a couple months already.
We're depending on what changes we make. I think from a SpaceX standpoint, I think we're ready within 30 days.
Yeah.
If we need to make a bunch of changes, I'd say from a SpaceX standpoint, not counting out regulatory, we're ready probably in less than 30 days. If there are bigger changes, I'd say not less. We're ready no later than 60 days, but probably closer to 30.
And that's where people are, going to be shocked that you're seeing these vehicles just continue to increase cadence. I mean, this is the third flight in a row where you lifted off the most, complicated vehicle ever made right at the top of the window. Not scrubbing for days and days trying to figure out how to launch. Just the countdown was so smooth. Hit T0.
We did have a ground valve, propellant tank valve on the ground that needed to be tweaked. But so that's what pushed it a little bit. But the vehicle itself had no issues.
That's still incredible. Yeah. I mean, on like the fourth flight ever of the largest, most powerful rocket ever built. I mean, that's insane, and it's just going to keep going. So Yeah, we're really excited. I know you guys have a lot to keep going here, so I really appreciate that you did follow up with us. This is
absolutely
awesome.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Occupy Mars, man.
Yeah, you're making progress.
Yeah.
Congratulations again. Thank you so much for your time, and can't wait for the next one.
All right, cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Elon. Thanks again so much, Elon, and everyone here at SpaceX who made this tour possible. Huge thank you. This is just incredible. We're so excited for what's going on. We're going to be out here for the next flight. You better believe it. So stay tuned. There's a lot more excitement to come. And while you're online, be sure and check out our incredible merch store for shirts like this, our Orbital shirt. We've got our heat shield tile collection, Falcon 9 model rockets, lots of other incredible stuff over at everydayastronaut.com/shop. Thanks, everybody. That's going to do it for me. I'm Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut, bringing space down to Earth for everyday people.